colleague Jenny Jones, who's a member of the London Assembly and also the House of Lords, I know has been here and has been raising that with the police at the highest level. We've been putting down today a motion in Parliament, an early day motion, absolutely commending you for being here, saying this is about peaceful debate and discussion about what our democracy should be like. This is exactly what should be facilitated, not criminalised and not made to be pushed to one side. So. As well, that from what I've gathered already from being down here, the quality of debate here is an awful lot higher, sadly, than the quality of debate in there. I was there this morning for a debate on a private member's bill. This private member's bill is a small attempt to get some better, more affordable housing, and also it would get rid of the bedroom tax for people on disabilities. That's a really important issue. But let me tell you that there were half a dozen Conservative MPs there whose sole purpose for being there was to filibuster it out. And so we had, in the space of about 20 minutes, 40 points of order as they were just trying to prevent that process. And so when you see those kinds of childish, ridiculous, irresponsible ways in which MPs are acting, the idea that somehow you are to be condemned and not them, I find utterly, utterly unacceptable. So thank you for bringing some real debate to Parliament. Hurrah! And the things that you're talking about are hugely important, because I do believe that we do have a crisis in our democracy. The fact that serious issues like the climate crisis or like alternatives to austerity aren't seriously being debated over there is, I think, a shame on the whole political system. We have an electoral system that is precisely designed to keep out alternative voices and to make sure that essentially the big parties have a cartel and a monopoly over the political debate. So when it comes to political reform, we absolutely need a fairer voting system, and we need the principle of a real recall system as well. And to his credit, Zac Goldsmith, who is in the wrong political party, but Zac Goldsmith has been spearheading a genuine recall motion that would properly put power back in the hands of ordinary people, not giving it to a committee of MPs to decide whether or not an MP should be recalled, but saying it is actually, of course, the constituents in that constituency who are the bosses. They are the ones who should decide if an MP is recalled. So that is a really important step forward, and we're fighting very hard in Parliament to get that principle accepted as well. And these things matter because as long as we have essentially the wrong people in power over there, then the debate about inequality, the debate about climate change, the debate around people with disabilities, all of those things are not going to get the resolution that they require. And that's why I believe there is a real connection between the democratic crisis and the climate crisis. And I want to say a few words about that. Right. Because it is ludicrous, frankly, that we have this government, this so-called greenest government ever, that is promoting huge tax breaks to companies to continue fracking, for example, continue setting up a whole new fossil fuel industry at exactly the time we've been told, and we know that we need to make that transition to an economy and to a society and an energy system that is truly sustainable. That to me is little short of a criminal act in itself. The idea that we know that we are heading for climate catastrophe, that we don't need more research, it's not even an issue of economics, it's an issue of politics. And the question is, what do we do when we know a majority of people in this country are desperate to see real action on climate change? What do we do when our politicians are completely out of touch and seem to be completely incapable of stepping up and showing some climate leadership? And that, I think, is what brings it back to all of us and all of you here. Because what we need is more political pressure building on our politicians so they can't ignore us. Sometimes it feels as if perhaps we don't have power, and I'm really reminded of that lovely quotation by Alice Walker, who said the most common way in which people give away their power is by not realizing that they have it. I think what's so important about your presence here now, what's important about you recognize that you have power, you recognize that all of us have power, and you're not afraid to use it. And that is what the message has to be going out there, because if we are serious about saving not just ourselves but future generations, people in the poorest countries, from the kind of climate catastrophe we're going to see, then we need all of us to take our power and to use it. And you know, one of the phrases that sticks in my mind, many of you will have seen that film, The Age of Stupid, where basically the premise is that a climate catastrophe has happened. The sole survivor of that crisis is played by the actor Pete Postlethwaite when he was still with us. And Pete Postlethwaite is that actor in 2050, it's based in 2050. He looks back to now. He looks back to all of the newsreels and the weather reels that tell us that climate change is real and has been happening for many years now. And he says in words that still make the hairs on the back of my neck go up when I say them, he says, "Why is it, knowing what we knew then, we didn't act when we still had time?" But one of the reasons we didn't was because your voices still need to get louder and the people in there still need to listen better. And so that's why I think it's so important that you are here, that you have these debates, that you talk about the solutions, and that we build more momentum, because if we don't, then the future is looking very grim, and there is an urgency to all of this. That is what I take from that quote from that film with Pete Postlethwaite, The Age of Stupid. We don't have forever to get this right. We have at most 5 or 10 years to begin to make sure that our emissions stabilize and start to come down in the West, and that then we help other countries to follow suit. And that means that this Parliament and the next Parliament that's in there is going to be absolutely critical, literally, to the livability of this planet. And that makes what we're all doing here tonight even more important, I think. And so there are good people in there are some good people in there who are trying to raise issues, for example, around stranded assets, that idea that so many of our pension funds and so much of the investment in this country is actually into fossil fuels, and yet if we don't realise them, if we can't actually exploit them because of the importance of keeping below 2 degrees warming, then that means we have not just a climate crisis but another financial crisis as well. Yesterday I wrote a letter and got some other MPs to sign it to the head of the pension fund in Parliament, to say that Parliament has to set an example and divest its own pension fund from fossil fuels. There is so much more that we need to be doing when it comes to addressing that climate crisis, and you are part of that solution. So I simply want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you for making that connection between democracy and climate, and indeed inequality as well. They are all connected. And the stronger your voices are, the better chance there is that people in here will actually listen to you and will be heard. So thank you so much.